Podcasting live from the offices of policebackground.net. This is the Police Applicant Podcast with your host, Ken Roybal.
Hey, welcome everybody to a special YouTube Live of the Police Applicant Podcast. We are joined here today with Sergeant Betsy Smith. Welcome, Betsy, to the special episode.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be with you today.
Yeah, this is pretty great because I appreciate you fitting us in. This is a kind of a this has been a hot topic in the last few days with this deputy in L.A. that was murdered in his car, and I just want to I can't think of anybody better to talk about this subject because it's just not the focus on the murder of this police officer, this deputy sheriff. But it's also this war on cops that's been escalating. And we talked about this the first time you and I met up. And this is just a real escalation into it. So I want to talk a little bit about, first I'm going to go and update everybody in case they haven't kept up to this. So on Saturday, September 16th, Deputy Ryan Clinkunbroomer, he's 30, he was found unconscious in his car with a gunshot wound to his head. By a passerby on it was Saturday evening, and the deputy was sitting in his patrol car outside the sheriff's station. He had been on duty and in uniform. He was shot leaving the station. He was sitting at a red light. Somebody stopped their car and just went up to him and assassinated him, just shot him in the back of the head. This deputy is a third generation LA County deputy sheriff. He got engaged to his girl 4 days before he was murdered, and his grandfather rose to the rank of captain, and his father was a lieutenant. And here we have the suspect was arrested yesterday, and I'm going to take this off because I don't want to give that dirtbag any more screen time than I have to. But the things I want to talk about, the news media is already coming up with he was a schizophrenic, and they're trying to make excuses as opposed to this is happening. But first, to let everybody know who Betsy is, she retired in 2009 as a 29-year veteran of a large metropolitan police department in the Chicago suburbs. She served on the advisory board of Police Marksman magazine, is currently a featured columnist and video contributor, both officer.com and policeone.com. Your bio is so much. I wasn't able to fit it all in, but you're also a Fox News, Newsmax contributor, along with a lot of, whenever there's something that's hot, they call Betsy up to give her take on this. You're an author and and you're also the spokesperson for the National Police Association. So with that, I want to hand this over to you. So when you first saw what happened to the deputy, what were your first thoughts?
It's just heartbreaking. Again, Deputy Clinkunbroomer was a third generation crime fighter. His dad and his grandpa both worked for the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department as well. He had been on the job 8 years, so he got on the job as soon as he was able to do so. And by all accounts, he was a terrific cop. He had just transferred to the Palmdale area a few months before. And I want everyone, if you haven't seen the video, go online and watch the video. It's hard to watch, but watch the video of his assassination, because he pulls away from the station, pulls over, something we all typically did, working on a report, whatever it is. And you see this scumbag pull up and literally execute him. And the murderer's name is Kevin Salazar. And his family, his sister was kind of the spokesman for the family. And she said, well, he's had some mental health issues. He might be schizophrenic. He's had a couple of involuntary committals, but of course he was always able to get out very quickly. He owned multiple firearms, and his family knew he owned multiple firearms, but they obviously did nothing to help that situation. And I think most of LA County right now is asking themselves, will George Gascon do the right thing? Because we really can't depend on the LA County prosecutor, former cop, I hate to say that, George Gascon, to really do the right thing here. He claims that he is going to prosecute this case to the fullest extent of the law, but already the Salazar family is making noise that, he was mentally ill. I don't care how mentally ill you are. You don't get to murder a cop. Now, this happened on Thank a Police Officer Day, September 19th, or I'm sorry, September 16th. 3 days earlier, a young police officer, a young dad and husband, was murdered in Iowa by a stalker and a fugitive. So this was we had multiple cops shot in just a few days. We also had a Texas police officer shot in the face during a traffic stop. And I could go on and on and on. There truly is a war on cops out there. You and I have talked about this in the past, and you on your awesome social media platforms, you talk about this virtually every day, and we don't seem to be getting a handle on it.
No. And the thing about this is that George Gascon, who, for anybody who doesn't know, he's a LA County district attorney. He didn't even have the time to show up at the news conferences. And he's a God. I don't have anything good. I'm embarrassed that he's a retired LAPD officer. That's embarrassing to me. But what do you think is going to happen? And the sheriff Luna, he's buddies with Gascon. Do you think this is going to turn out, or what do you think about the feds taking over on this?
Well, I don't know. I watched Sheriff Luna, he seems genuinely heartbroken, but he has been behind so many of these anti-cop policies, brought in not just by George Gascon, but brought in by your legislature there in California, ushered in by the governor, and this is the thing. Let's go back and talk about George Gascon. He's the prosecutor in LA County. He is one of the over 73 George Soros installed prosecutors in this country. He is one of the most well-known, and he is the guy who said that he would not prosecute many, many different types of crimes. And one of the things his office has been doing is his office has been trying to get out of prison people who have already been convicted of crimes. He is not a friend of crime victims. He's certainly not a friend of law enforcement. And, but he survived a recall effort. And so the people in LA County who elected him, I've got to say, are kind of stuck with him, for the time being. And again, same with the sheriff. The sheriff, when he got elected, spent a lot of time talking about, frankly, pro-criminal policies and kind of chastising his own deputies, just like we've seen with Mayor Karen Bass, in the city of LA. And, California is not a great place to be a citizen right now or to be a police officer. One of the things I'm not sure that people understand that's happening in California, there's a task force in California that investigates police shootings of unarmed people. Now, when anybody can Google this and you'll eventually find it, although Google doesn't want you to. But this task force has basically failed at the job it was supposed to do. And the few cases that they have been able to investigate, they have been forced to find that the police officer involved did nothing wrong. California legislators spend a lot of time trying to pass new legislation that hamstrings law enforcement and that provides cover, if you will, for criminals, and they just don't seem to give a damn about crime victims.
And the the politicians, they come out, if they come out with any statements, they're very, very like, what do you call it? Cookie cutter. Karen Bass hasn't come out with anything significant. Gas gone. His office put something out. I haven't seen anything from Gavin Newsom, the governor. So are these laws? Well, let me ask you this. We talked about the escalation of the war on cops. I can go back to 2008 with Obama and moving forward with the birth of BLM and all this kind of stuff. And we always talked about the war on cops. But is this like, I mean, you've got the New York Nintendo riots. You've got these kids that are challenging cops and fighting with them. You've got blatant murders of police officers. Is this an escalation?
What we have is just a general lack of concern for the safety of others, for the property of others. That's why you see these gangs of retail thieves. You see these viral videos all around the country, a lot of them in California. This is why you see, Whole Foods bailing out of its flagship store. This is why you see malls closing in San Francisco. This is why you see these high-end malls attacked by criminal gangs and the security guards sprayed with pepper spray. And now what we're starting to see is it's getting more attention because people of wealth, people of fame and notoriety are starting to become crime victims, not just in California, but all around the country. Washington, D.C. is a perfect example where the Washington, D.C., defund the police city council tried to pass sweeping criminal justice reform in their own criminal code. And in a crazy, rare bipartisan move, Congress had to step in and shut that down because it was basically going to open up a lack of penalties and just make it easier for people to commit crime in Washington, D.C. And one of the reasons that they decided to vote against that Congress was because some of their own members and staffers were getting physically attacked on the streets of the District of Columbia. So we're seeing that in LA. We're seeing that in Chicago. We're seeing that in Seattle. Seattle is crazy dangerous right now. We also see that 9 out of every 10 police departments is shorthanded on this country, is shorthanded in this country. So is there a war on cops? There absolutely is. And to go back to your original question, there truly is a lack of human concern for the lives of, again, not just police officers, but for people in general. I'm sure most of your viewers and listeners saw that viral video that came out of Las Vegas where a month ago in September, a retired police chief was murdered right before our eyes by 2 young thugs live streaming basically a live action video game. They were modeling a video game that they had played, and they happened to see a 65-year-old guy on his road bike trying to get some exercise, and they just ram him and kill him on the spot. And again, we see this throughout the country. Let me just give everybody a few stats right now. We have had, as of right now, 36 police officers killed just by gunfire this year. We've had officers murdered in other ways, stabbings, assaults, and vehicular assaults, but 36 have been killed by gunfire this year. We've had over 300 police officers shot so far this year, and it's September, and 100 of those officers were shot in 80 ambush-style attacks, the type of attack that killed our deputy in Los Angeles County. So is there a war on cops? You're damn right there is.
And you know what's got me too is that these suspects, when you and I were working patrol, we would go after people and we knew they were good for something. It seems in 2023 the reason to kill a cop is because they're there or they want to talk to you. So what's going on with that? It just seems like it's an escalation in the ability. They went from no, I'm going to resist to I'm just going to shoot you because you got out of the car.
That's because of this 3 years plus of the false narratives that somehow American law enforcement is the problem. Remember, famously, the president of the United States, when he was a candidate for president, when he was going through the primary process, he famously said on television that if you are a young African American and you get pulled over by the police, you will probably be shot in the head. That is inexcusable for anyone to say that. This is why the National Police Association exists, because what we are trying to do is fight that false narrative that somehow it's the American law enforcement officer that is the problem when it comes to violent crime in this country. And, I get into arguments with people all the time where they say, well, the American law enforcement officer is gunning down African-American men every day. No, we're not. Mm-hmm. And in fact, who guns down young African-American men? Sadly, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's mostly young African-American men. They're killing each other. It's not us. The American law enforcement officer, we kill about 1,000 people a year. The Washington Post and a website called Mapping Police Violence loves to throw out these statistics, but they don't tell you why these people were killed by law enforcement. Why do we use deadly force? Because someone is trying to kill us. We're in fear for our life or in fear for the life of an innocent third party. But when you just Google these statistics or you watch TikTok or you look at Twitter, these places that especially young people get their news, they are being told that it's us that is attacking them, that it's the American law enforcement officer. That's the problem. So that has translated now, Ken, into exactly what you just said, where people are just killing police officers because they can. And it's because they perceive us as dangerous. They don't value our lives. And frankly, they don't value anybody's lives, including their own.
Yeah. In 2020, I mean, the nation burnt down. It was all about BLM and it was all about demonizing the police officers. Then all of a sudden that just went away. And what happened? What happened? The cops, it was interesting that it was an election year, but do you think we're looking forward to 2024 and then them ramping up? The cops are killing black men and all this again?
Well, I don't know, because, I had a lot of hope in November of 2022, where we all thought there was going to be this big red wave. And, we're the National Police Association. We're an apolitical group, but we advocate for pro law enforcement, pro crime victim policies and laws. And so we were hopeful in November of 2022 that we were going to, see elected a lot of pro-police, pro-law and order candidates. And frankly, that didn't happen. So as we, we have a lot of, there's a lot of local elections around the country this fall, November 7th. There's going to be a lot of mayoral races that are important, city council races, things like that. And I want people to understand, you got to pay attention. I know we're getting all eaten up with who's going to be the presidential candidates in 2024. First of all politics is local. That's an old famous saying. And we have very important elections around the country this November. Pay attention to who is running in your local area for city council, for your county board, for your county prosecutor, for your local sheriff's race, things like that. Make sure these are pro-America, pro-police, pro-crime victim, pro-law and order candidates. And then as we go into 2024, do I think crime and the war on cops is going to be an issue? You're darn right it's going to be an issue. And I hope the American people really see what's happening, because the National Police Association, again, we do polling, and our polling of likely voters tells us that people like their cops. They're worried about our safety. They're worried about our mental health, and they don't want us defunded. They want us to have more funding. And in fact, right now, we have a mobile billboard traveling around this country. Today, it's in Texas, and it's got a mobile billboard from the National Police Association asking people to defend the police, not defund the police, defend the police. And you know what? It's wildly popular. Go figure. So hopefully that translates into us all seeing a change in this country to go back to law and order.
It seems like there's, I don't know if this is something that I'm just making up, but it seems like there's support for the cops more than there was before. And Heather McDonald has a really good book called War on Cops. You have it on your shelf there. And I've seen her numerous times, and she was talking about this back in 2020. So now, and you know what? I want to get your take on this, because in 2020, she's going on news. They're talking about war on cops and all this types of things, and the left is poo-pooing her. You know, there's no war.
Well, they called her racist.
Yes. I mean, she was just spitting out facts, and I guess that's racist. But now here we are. Heather's back in 3 years ago talking about this stuff, and then in 2023, police departments can't recruit to save their lives. There are police departments giving out $30,000 hiring bonuses, 45. There's one in California with $75,000 hiring bonuses. How are they paying for that $75,000? They're using the salaries of the officers that quit. And so how is this war on cops? How has this affected recruitment?
Well, as you know, most police departments, large or small in this country, are short-staffed. And in fact, when you look at, because I think most people don't know, we always think of LAPD, Chicago PD, NYPD. Most police departments are small. And what we are seeing is rural towns and counties in this country are having to just disband their police departments and try and contract with nearby jurisdictions or the county sheriff's department, because they can't hire enough police officers to even staff these tiny small town police departments. So this 3 years, and really we can go back to 2014, the death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, the rise of the Black Lives Matter grift. We can go back to all of that. That's what really started this. But especially, Ken, the last 3 years of this vilification and demonization of the American law enforcement officer has led to cops on the job saying, you know what, I'm out. I'm going to get my 20 years and get out. Or, you know what, I've been here 12 years. I'm going to go do something else for a living. I'm going to figure out something else to do to support my family. And then we have young people who were encouraged by people like you and me to, hey, be a cop. It's the best job ever. We loved being a cop. And, but now we're not doing that anymore. And so we can't recruit quality applicants. And this is something you talk about. It's so valuable, the information you put out there. You talk about this a lot, is the lack of quality candidates. Right. And you and I spent our whole careers talking about what? The professionalization of law enforcement. We wanted to be a profession like lawyers and like doctors and like teachers. So yeah, let's get educated and let's have lots of training and let's be professional in all that we do. Now we're scraping the bottom of the barrel to get, to fill up an academy class of 30 people where we would have had 1,000 people vying for 50 jobs.
Yeah. And I keep in the know as far as LAPD recruitment goes. They need 60 people per class. They put 13 classes per year. They need 60. They're getting 25, 22. And I just think that's indicative of the problem that we have. It's just not police candidates just don't all of a sudden go, nah, in mass. I don't think I want to be a cop. There's something that's driving that. And you made mention of Gavin Newsom, and you've got Portland, Seattle, Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, where these are just crime meccas. Crime is out of control in a lot of these areas. What what is the news media asking you when you go on Fox News and Newsmax and these other news shows? What are they asking you? What do they want to know from you?
Well, they want to know where this is all heading. I get that question every single day. What are we going to do about this, Sarge? And where are we heading? And that's, you talk about Gavin Newsom, who is traveling around the country, but he's not a candidate for anything. But he's talking about all of his great policies while he is the number 2 state in the nation that people are fleeing from. My home state of Illinois is number 1, I'm sad to say. But he doesn't give a damn about cops, and he doesn't appear to give a damn about crime victims. And part of it, why? He doesn't have to worry about it. He's got personal security. He lives in the governor's mansion. His Aunt Nancy Pelosi, has great security, and all of his friends and family, he can go out and have dinner at the French Laundry, and his bodyguards will go with him, and he doesn't have to worry about getting carjacked or anybody attacking the restaurant or anything like that. And so he just wants to push that leftist rhetoric again, that somehow we need more and more police reform instead of criminal reform. But to get back to your original question, what do I get asked? What are we going to do? So I keep asking people to pay attention. I know that most people who are pro-police and pro-law and order are probably right now working 2 jobs, and they're trying to raise their kids or get through college or whatever it is. But you have got to pay attention to your local elections, and you also have to make your voice heard. One of the things we do locally here in Pima County, Arizona, is that we communicate with our local and state and federal legislators. We send emails and we say, hey, this sounds like a stupid bill, or hey, this sounds like a great bill. We need you to do this. What are you doing about this? We have got to stop being so supine as voters and as Americans. And I know people, I know a lot of people are listening to me say this going, nothing we do is going to help, Sarge. Yes, it will. We have got to be loud, and we have got to be proud about taking this country back from the criminals, from the cartel, and from the anti-police, anti-law and order far left.
So you talk about you talk about like Gavin Newsom. I focus on him because he's an idiot, but the thing about him is that places like California, they come up with laws, Colorado, all these states that want to do away with qualified immunity. And qualified immunity, you take that away and you let police candidates know. I don't think that's a good thing. Can you talk about qualified immunity and why it's important?
I think, you hear a lot of propaganda about qualified immunity. Qualified immunity means cops can do anything they want and they can't be sued. Nothing could be further from the truth. All qualified immunity does is protect a police officer against frivolous, nonsensical, or mean-spirited lawsuits. I have been sued multiple. I was a cop for 29 years. I was sued multiple times. Every single one of them was frivolous. And as long as I was acting within the scope of my department's policy, and what I was doing was I was doing it under the color of law, and I was involved in an off-duty lawsuit as well. And my department covered me because these lawsuits were frivolous and ridiculous. All qualified immunity says is that your police department, your jurisdiction, will back you up in a lawsuit as long as you are acting within the scope of the laws and your department policy. So even if I make a mistake, as long as I made that mistake thinking that I was doing the right thing, then qualified immunity covers me. Now, again, people are saying, well, if you make a mistake, shouldn't you be punished? We get punished for making a mistake. Absolutely. And, famously, Officer Kim Potter in Minnesota accidentally pulled out her handgun when she thought she was pulling out her taser, and she paid civilly and she paid criminally. She spent over a year in prison. But the department was able to, back her up, civilly and things like that. So yes, we get punished when we do wrong things. One of the things I want people to understand is this. The Johns Hopkins University just came out with a study that looked at all of places that people get medical care, not just hospitals, but urgent care, doctor's offices, doctor pop-ups, things like that. And they found that there are over 750,000 people a year killed by medical mistakes in this country. How many protests, Ken, are at the hospital nearest to your house? How many doctor's offices are we trying to burn down or picket? How many doctors and nurses are we trying to put in prison? Oh, none. So we have got to understand, yes, cops make mistakes. You know what? When you compare us to the medical profession and other professions, our mistakes are few and far between, and the scrutiny is incredibly high. And one more thing, last year, I believe it was over 250 school teachers in this country were arrested and are being prosecuted for the sexual assault of children. But again, what are we trying to do? We're trying to protest cops. We're trying to get rid of cops. It's an upside down world that we're living in. And that is one of the many reasons why we can't get people to stay in this profession or to come as new recruits to be American law enforcement officers.
Yeah, it seems like politicians, a lot of times they'll just jump on the bandwagon. Let's defund the cops. Let's do away with qualified immunity. Let's decertify cops. And it seems like the flavor of the week or something like that. And that bugs me. But you know what? I got to ask you a question here. I am such not a fan of weak police chiefs. Weak police chiefs who are politicians. They're just figureheads. And I could go on for days about police chiefs. What and what is your take on these political puppets? I'm going to go and say it for me. These political puppets who are appointed as police chiefs, but they just do not inspire. I would not go into a gun battle with a lot of these chiefs. What's your take on that?
I would ask everyone to, first of all, if you want to see what a real police chief looks like, go to San Bernardino, California. They have a chief there who is just an incredible leader. He tells the truth. He backs up his people, and he punishes them when they need to be punished. He's just and you know what? His community loves him as well. But we see so many of these police chiefs and police superintendents who are incredibly weak. And again, we started seeing this in 2020 when we saw these police leaders, police chiefs and their deputy chiefs and things like that, laying down on the pavement and kneeling in front of Black Lives Matter. It makes me sick. And you know what we're seeing though with so many of these police chiefs, especially when you look east, we're seeing a lot of these East Coast police chiefs that are now leaving. They were brought in with great fanfare that they were going to reform this agency and change this agency. Right now, Philadelphia, Danielle Outlaw comes to mind. You know what? She came in, she was going to be this great reformer. She came from Portland, and you know what happened? Homicide skyrocketed during her reign. So she's actually leaving to take a lesser job in New Jersey. And she's not the only one. We're seeing this all around the country. Weak police chiefs lead to weak police work in their communities, and they directly affect crime victims in the neighborhoods that they profess to want to protect. You know, this is why there's such a huge difference between police chiefs and sheriffs. Sheriffs are elected by the people. Police chiefs, generally speaking, are appointed by politicians. So you look at these police chiefs all around in these extremely blue cities, Portland, Seattle, LA, Austin, Chicago, NYPD. You know, and NYPD had a great police commissioner in Keeshant Sewell. And you know what they just did? They just ran her out on a rail because she was a good leader, a cop's cop, and she wanted the NYPD, the largest police department in this country, to actually do police work. And her mayor wouldn't have it. So she's out. So it's really unfortunate. You see these great leaders come in, and a lot of times they get run out on a rail by politicians, by anti-police politicians. And you see the weak ones, they want to keep that double six-figure job and get that great pension. And they don't really give a dang about their communities.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I've always thought. It's just about their pension, you know, what contributes to their pension. And, that just makes me nuts. There's the Polk County Sheriff in Florida, Grady. I can't remember his last name. So, and they go, the news media will say something like, "Don't you think it's a little inflammatory that you say that we'll shoot the bad guy?" And he goes, "We'll shoot him graveyard dead." That's how bad we'll shoot them. And I like that. I mean, police work is violent. And if you shoot at cops, a police chief needs to go, if you shoot at my officers, we're going to shoot back. There's a great likelihood you will not survive. So it's not a good idea. But I don't see that a lot. No,
and in fact, you know, going to back to the murder of our LASD deputy, you know, you heard a lot of kind of strong talk from people, including the sheriff. We're gonna get this bad guy, this and that, and you know. But now that the guy's in custody, you know, I'm not hearing all the passion that I was hearing just 24 hours ago, and that's one of the problems too. We're going to see is that safety for our citizens and safety for law enforcement is going to become regional, and that's not the American way. And I, you know, again, you voters need to change that, because everyone deserves to live in a safe community, and every cop deserves to work in a safe area and to be able to protect themselves. And things are getting so regional. You know, the left loves to talk about equity. There's not much equity when it comes to being a crime victim in this country.
No, I live in a rural Washington State county, and there was the news stations that are up in Seattle, and there was a liberal news station that did a story, and they said there is such a disparity between King County, where Seattle is, and my county, which is the rural conservative county, and they're going, how come in King County that somebody does something, and they get like I don't know, community service. But in Kens County, they get the death penalty. What seems to be the problem here? And the DA out here, he goes, if you commit a crime, you're going to get convicted of it, and you're going to prison. Up in King County, where the liberals live, they get all like, what's going on down there? And I think a lot of it has to do with politics. Going back to George Gascon, the LA County DA. Okay, so the guy's in custody. There's been nothing from Gascon's office.
No, I find that frightening, because, you know, in a normal situation because remember, this case made national news, and you would think Gascon, again, a former cop, and again, one of the highest law enforcement authorities in Los Angeles County, you would think that he would have had a press conference saying that we are going to prosecute this cop killer to the fullest extent of the law. What I'm waiting for, I think a lot of us are waiting for, is for him to come out and talk about this poor mentally ill man who was forced to shoot the evil police officer. And I hope I'm wrong about that.
Yeah. And you know what, going back to they got this guy in custody 5 a.m. or something like that, and they were outside his house, and he's not coming out. They had to put tear gas in there. And these criminals, they're so brave and they're so brazen when they can ambush a cop and shoot him from behind. But then when it comes time to cowboy up and
you saw him with his hands up, right?
Yeah. That makes me nuts.
Yeah.
We talked about this before, and the liberal news media. If you say anything like calling cops warriors and warrior ethos and all that, they go, "Oh, you can't say that because it's words are violence." And forget you. Tell us about the warrior ethos and why it is so important, even in 2023, when libs are going, "It's just so violent." Why police work is violent? Tell us about the warrior ethos and why it's important.
If you want to do a little research, there's a great book by Stephen Pressfield. He's the guy who wrote Gates of Fire. It's a book called Warrior Ethos, and he really outlines it from a historical way of what that is. And this is something my husband, Dave Smith, and I teach cops around the country, that yes, you are a warrior. The word ethos means values or habits. What are the habits of a warrior cop? You know what they are? Duty, honor, courage, loyalty, strength, selfless service. Aren't those the traits that you want your local law enforcement officer to come to work every day and display as they are protecting the community and protecting themselves? That's what warriorship is. You heard this nonsense, in the last 10 years or so, that in fact there was a book called The Rise of the Warrior Cop, and that police were being militarized and this and that. Warriorship simply means that we are willing to die for the people that we are trying to protect. We are willing to fight to the death to uphold that Constitution that we all took an oath to, and that we are willing to get hurt doing it. It has nothing to do with militarization. It has nothing to do with, we're not hunting down our citizens. We're not hunting down the public. You know what we're doing? You know what a warrior cop does? A warrior cop hunts evil. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole lot more evil in this country right now, and a whole lot less cops to hunt it. But you know what? They're still doing it every day, every night in this country.
Yeah, and when a police officer is murdered, I don't see the need for using soft language to being politically correct and all that. And so I get that, but I really don't care because I'm retired, and what I say, it doesn't affect anybody else. I like the warrior ethos. Police work is violent, and I had a bonus question for you, but I have to. Oh, I know what it was. So I started on the job in 1980 in Los Angeles, and I was in a police car with my training officer, and he brought up during my training. He said in 1968, 72, something like that. Anyways, he was on the job in Newton Division where he was training me, and he said, "I'm going to teach you some tactics that the Black Panthers used to use." The Black Panthers, when they were active, in Los Angeles, they would bring cars up at stoplights and they would box them in so they can ambush the police officers. He taught me tactics to prevent this. Here we have, moving forward to 2023, and now we have an officer that's minding his own business, stopped at a light. You teach tactics. You teach police tactics. Do we need to start looking at ambush style awareness?
Absolutely. One of the aspects that we teach is a section in our officer survival classes called Avoiding an Officer Ambush. And we go into great detail. We show a lot of videos, and we go into great detail on everything from the exact tactics you're talking about, on how to avoid that when you're stopped at a stoplight or parked in a parking lot and things like that. And then, we go on to talk about self-aid and buddy aid, tactical medical aid for yourself and for your partner. And the last part of that section, Avoiding an Officer Ambush, is we talk about fighting the false narrative. And that's one of the things that police officers and police families and supporters of law enforcement need to do, is to help us fight that false narrative that, again, the American law enforcement officers, somehow some racist killing thug out there attacking members of our community. One of the reasons that officer ambushes are on 150% upward trajectory right now is because of that false narrative. And we've got to fight it, not just with ourselves and our families. We've got to make sure that that doesn't get perpetuated in our schools, in our churches, and in our local media.
Yeah, I just it's really a shame that we've come to this. I posted an Instagram story today that there's a sandwich shop, I think it was in Philadelphia if I'm not mistaken, has hired security with AR-15s at a sandwich shop in Philadelphia. I'm like, is this where we're at? Because if we get to the point where they have gas station armed, you know, we're talking about rifles.
QT's got its own police department.
Yeah. So if we're to that point with a sandwich shop, what does that mean for cops? You know?
Well, I'll tell you, I was just in Chicago 2 weeks ago. I went wedding dress shopping with my daughter. So we went to Chicago, and what I saw in my former city was armed security everywhere we went. And I'll be honest, about half of them that I saw, because everybody I was with, my daughter and her friends and stuff, they mostly didn't notice them. I saw them because I, like you, I have that eye for that stuff. A lot of them were gangbangers, but they were, making sure that these restaurants and retail stores and things like that were well protected, and that's kind of a double-edged sword. It's almost like we go back to the mob days of paying protection. But when you've got a police department like Chicago that is short hundreds and hundreds of officers, you're going to see a lot more private security of this nature.
So I got two questions for you before we close out. But one of them is, here we are, everything's going to crap. Police departments are going to crap. Cities are going to crap. Why don't they do something? Like, yeah, we've had it with this. You know what? Crime is out of, you know what? We're not going to do this anymore. And cops are going to start enforcing the law. How come nobody's doing that?
Well, I'll tell you, there's a theory that what is happening right now politically is a purposeful attempt to create chaos so that these same politicians can come in and take control, very similar to what they did during COVID. So if you for example, let's look at the streets of New York, you've got the migrants running wild, you've got rampant crime, you've got a police department that's going to be, below 9,000 officers for the first time in 50 years. If there's enough chaos created and then the government comes in and says, well, you're going to have to stay in your house for these many hours a day. You're only going to be able to work within this certain area. You're only going to be able to shop at these certain stores, but you'll be safe. That's one of the theories that I often hear. And again, going back to my native Chicago, one of the things you're hearing as retail stores are bailing out of the city of Chicago because it's too dangerous, the newly elected mayor there is saying, hey, we're going to have city-owned grocery stores and city-owned retail stores. But people say, oh, well, great, that'll be safe. What they don't understand is then the government tells you, because they're going to control it, what you can buy, where you can shop, this and that. So there is that theory that if we have continued chaos, then people will submit to additional control. I'm not sure I believe all that personally, but I do believe in these blue cities, you are seeing an absolute purposeful destruction of the criminal justice system and of the city. And then we can talk about the border forever, but you are seeing a very purposeful destruction of this country with our open southern border. A country is not sovereign if it can't control our borders. So really, a long answer to your question is I think we're seeing an attack on this country, but it's an attack from within.
Yeah, well, which was predicted decades and decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
The last question I have for you is I talk to police candidates, I talk to police officers every day, and you do too. And sometimes they tell me, I don't know if I want to apply because of all this stuff. And I have to be honest with them. I go, I don't know. Police work is a calling. I don't know what to tell you if you don't want to apply. And then police officers go, man, I'm out. I didn't make my 20. I just can't do it anymore. What advice do you have for police officers and candidates who it just looks insurmountable?
For police candidates, I still maintain to this day that the 29 years that I was a police officer was the absolute greatest adventure of my lifetime. And you're absolutely right, Ken. It is a calling. It is a mission. And I don't think that anyone who has that calling would regret it. But what I would tell candidates is this: do your research. Just don't say, oh, I'm going to test for, the city I live in or whatever. Look at the policies of the jurisdiction you live in, the jurisdiction you're applying for, and the jurisdiction of the state that you are in. And make sure that you are applying to agencies that have pro law and order, pro police policies. And that may mean that you might have to move away from home. You might have to move to Florida or to Texas or, go to Wyoming and be cold, but you can have a great law enforcement adventure in states like North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, come here to Arizona. But again, do your research. And I would tell cops who are frustrated and are still on the job, but are thinking about getting it out. One, I would tell you, get politically involved. All politics is local. So make sure you understand what is happening politically. You can't just, you and I, we got hired the same year. We were told to shut up and keep our politics to ourselves. And that was appropriate. We were supposed to be apolitical, at least when we were on duty. But cops now need to start paying attention to politics, especially local politics, and get involved. And if you're young enough and you work for an agency that you just see that things are never going to change, or you don't think they are, then move somewhere where they are. There are a lot of pro-police agencies and pro-police states and counties around this country that will take you and your vast experience. And you know what? If you got a family, those are probably better places to live anyway. Yeah. So don't give up it's okay to give up on your agency. Don't give up on this profession, because we, the American public, need you.
Yeah. And I just want, I got a comment here. So John, get a hold of me, ken@policebackground.net. I will be glad to talk to you about that. Good question though.
And John, thank you for applying and going through the process.
Yeah, we appreciate you. I'm always willing to give a call when I get contacted. I give them a call and talk to them. So John, feel free to give me a holler. Betsy, thank you for being here. I got to tell folks, Betsy Smith is one of my Blue Line heroes. There's very few people. The first time Betsy was on the podcast, I said, I got us all in studio. I'm going, hello, Betsy. I got shaky and stuff. But, doing research on Betsy, man, in 2020, she was going toe to toe with BLM on a news program. And I'm going, gosh, that's good. That is some good stuff. Betsy is not shy. If you have any questions for her, send them to me. I'll send them to her.
Absolutely.
To answer for you. But if you want anybody that's an expert, has their finger on the pulse of United States policing and what's going on, the war on cops, we're talking about the killing of LASD Deputy I don't want to mess this up, Clinkunbroomer in Palmdale. And Betsy has shared some amazing thoughts about that. So again, thank you so much. I know you got to you have another Fox News interview.
Yeah, in about 45 minutes or about 50 minutes, you can see me on Fox Business.
Fox Business. So grab some lunch, Betsy. I don't think you've grabbed some lunch from your other newscast that you had to do today, but we appreciate
I'll
you.
eat later.
and
I just want to thank you. You know, I look at your Instagram multiple times a day, and you are doing the Lord's work, man. The law enforcement profession needs you.
I appreciate that so much. It's good to be retired, is it not?
It is.
I don't have anybody breathing down my neck or monitoring well, they do monitor my Instagram. I do know that, but there's nothing they can do about it. So, well, thank you again, Betsy. And like I say, if you have any questions, also, how can they catch up with you and what you're doing, what work you're doing at the National Police Association, all that?
So you can go to our website, nationalpolice.org, and see the NPA report there, my video podcast that I do, and see all my news hits there. And you can follow the National Police Association at NAT Police Assoc, NAT Police ASSOC. And you can follow me on Twitter at SGT Betsy Smith, at Sergeant Betsy Smith. And I love to talk to people on Twitter.
Yeah, it's well worth it. Betsy's a wealth of knowledge, and she's doing some amazing work out there. Thank you so much, Betsy. And I will catch up with you on Instagram as well. Thanks, everybody.